Welcome to the Invested Dads Podcast, simplifying financial topics so that you can take action and make your financial situation better. Helping you to understand the current world of financial planning and investments, here are your hosts, Josh Robb and Austin Wilson.
All right. Hey. Welcome back to the Invested Dads Podcast, a podcast where we take you on a journey to better your financial future. I am Austin Wilson, research analyst at Hicks & Zerker Capital Management.
And I am Josh Robb, Director of Wealth Management of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. Austin, how can people help us grow this podcast?
Yeah, first of all, we would love it if you'd subscribe if you're not subscribed already. So whatever podcast player you are using to listen to us so that you get notified every Thursday to your device. Also, we would love it if you would visit our website and sign up for our weekly newsletter to get what the episode's about, some notes about it, and a link directly right there to listen.
Right.
So today, Josh, we are going to be talking about the news that came out on August 24th, 2022, that the Biden administration had announced a student loan relief plan.
Okay.
So that was big news.
Big news.
It was talked about all over the place.
I think it trended on Twitter.
It for sure trended on Twitter, and it's a fiery topic.
Yes.
Let's just say it's polarizing, as most things are. We will definitely have some time for some opinions, but we are going to try and come at this from a balanced approach, giving you, first of all, the facts of what was released, because it's extremely high level also at this point.
Yes.
And preliminary. So we can't get into the weeds too much. Let's talk about some stats.
Okay.
I'm a numbers guy. Did you know that?
You're a numbers guy.
I got really all of this information straight from the whitehouse.gov briefing.
Okay. So the stats are probably pulled from good sources there.
Yes. So I have a link in the show notes to this release, which has all of the information we're going to be talking about today, aside from our opinions. So here we go. Stats. Yes. Approximately 45 million students, or former students, I guess, hold approximately 1.6 trillion in student loans in the United States. Now, yes, you heard that right. That was not a B, that was a T. 1.6 trillion in student loans. What do those numbers make you feel?
I mean, it's hard to comprehend $1 trillion. So that's a lot of debt for education.
That is, it's a lot of debt. So, according to the article, nearly 1/3 of borrowers have student loans, but no degree. So, this means they went to college, they weren't able to finish college for whatever reason, and they still have the debt incurred that they paid for it with. So, that is another pillar of, that we're going to discuss a little bit later is what that looks like. But yeah, nearly 1/3 there. Approximately 16% of borrowers are in default on student loan payments. And this was a statistic that confused me a little bit, only because, well, for the last 2.5 years, there has been no required payments on federal student loans anyway.
Yep.
Because of pandemic relief and all of that. So maybe this is stuff that has occurred, I'm assuming, prior to that.
My guess is if you were in default and then you got a moratorium on your payments, you're still in default because nothing's changed.
Gotcha.
But yes, you're right. It probably hasn't increased.
Yeah,
at
it was
all
before.
since then. Yeah.
You were already late.
Yeah. And I guess there's no motivation to pay during that time for anybody really in general. Yeah. So, yeah. I saw in a Forbes article, which I can link in the show notes as well, 30% of those people have been in default for over 5 years.
Wow.
So, of that group, 30% of them.
I have a feeling that would do some bad things to your credit score.
You would think.
Another note, just a fact, that the current administration that put this release out and this plan ran on in 2020, really, that they were going to try to address student loans in some way, shape, or form and provide some form of relief, whether that be forgiveness or whatever. This is being reiterated as a campaign promise fulfilled.
Yep.
So this is a 3-part plan. Number 1, the Department of Education will provide up to $20,000 in debt cancellation to Pell Grant recipients with loans held by the Department of Education. So these are federal student loans.
Yep.
And up to $10,000 in debt cancellation to non-Pell Grant recipients.
And Pell Grant are for the lower income.
Lower income
You qualify
households.
for that with lower income, so you get an extra $10,000
Correct.
if you're in that category. Okay.
Borrowers are eligible for this relief if their individual income is less than $125,000 or $250,000 for married couples. And in conjunction with this part 1, the pause on federal student loan repayments will be extended one final time.
They kind of said that.
Yeah.
Okay.
To the end of a year. 12/31 is when that will be ending. It says in the release that borrowers should expect to resume student loan payments for federal student loans in January 2023.
And I'm going to say, I do appreciate that because there is so much uncertainty because, as they extended these throughout the last 2 years, they did kind of wait to the end to decide what they were going to do.
Right.
To be able to say now, you have 6 months
and
here,
then you
5 months to think about it. Just get ready.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate that piece at least.
It is forewarning. It's not just like, boom.
We decided not to renew it. Now everybody start right now.
But this is, if you look at over the last 2.5 years or whatever, it's been renewed or extended probably like 3 or 4 times. So this is the final one. Number 2. So second piece of this discussion is, and I'm going to pretty much quote from what we're talking about here, in an effort to cut monthly payment amounts for undergrad loans, the Department of Education is proposing a new income-driven repayment system that protects more low-income borrowers from making any payments and caps monthly payments for undergraduate loans at 5% of a borrower's discretionary income, which is half the rate that borrowers must pay now under most existing plans. Also, there's amendments for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness, or PSLF, program by proposing a rule that borrowers who have worked at a nonprofit, in the military, or in federal, state, tribal, or local government receive an appropriate credit towards loan forgiveness. Trying to bring down payments towards matching income a little bit and ensuring the fact that borrowers in nonprofits essentially get some credit.
Yeah. And that was a program that's been around where if you graduated and you had debt and you went into certain sectors, so that if you're a teacher in certain districts that qualify, after 10 years, you had your remaining balance forgiven as long as you make payments along the way or whatever.
Yes.
So they're amending and adjusting this program for that. Okay.
Yep. And the third and final component of this discussion, again, it's really a discussion at this point, these are proposals in a lot of ways, is that the president has said he will continue to fight to double the maximum Pell Grant and make community college free. The administration will also work with colleges to, quote unquote, keep prices reasonable. So there's really not a lot of details on this, and some discussion was that there would essentially be a list published every year so that prospective students could look and find what colleges increase their costs crazy over a year or a given year or whatever, so that it would incentivize universities to keep their increases down. That's kind of what we're thinking. It's not like they can't necessarily, in a lot of instances, be like, no, you can't charge that. But they're going to make it more visible, I think, so that people don't want to go to those crazy pricey ones. So those are the 3 parts of this plan. There are some other statistics that were also noted in this release. First, that it could cancel the full remaining balance for roughly 20 million borrowers.
So I tried to do the math there from earlier where you said $1.6 trillion, 45 million students.
Yep.
So it was about $35,000 average if you just divide those numbers. Okay. So that would make sense that, of a group of that, if that's the average, if there's people that are below that average and 10,000 or 20, they get completely wiped out.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It is also estimated that among borrowers who are no longer in school, so that's like the group you're looking at, nearly 90% of relief dollars will go to those earning less than $75,000 a year. So 90% of the dollars are going to go towards those earning less than $75,000 a year, which is significantly under the cap. Of 100.
I was just thinking how they figured that out. That's an interesting stat.
Well, I'm sure they know that based on taxes, probably the estimated earnings of people, of people who hold student loans, right? So I'm assuming a lot of these are going to be very high level assumptions also at this point, because it's not really certain how it's going to work.
And this is really only for undergrad, right? Because for master's degrees and stuff,
correct,
you don't get the subsidized federal loans.
Yep. Okay. And another statistic is the Department of Education estimates that among borrowers who are eligible for relief, 21% are 25 years and under, so about a fifth. 44% are ages 26 through 39. More than a third of borrowers are 40 and up, including, this is the part that was crazy to me,
I saw this.
5% of student loan holders, I guess borrowers, are senior citizens.
Wow.
So
so you're 60
and you have student
You've been
loans.
out for 40 years, let's say, and you're still paying your student loans.
Yeah.
Now, I guess you could have gone back later and got a...
I guess, but still.
Man, that's crazy.
I know, that does sound crazy to me. So those are the statistics, the facts of the plan that are, again, very high level and preliminary, but that's where things sit right now, and some other statistics that were in that release. Right now, before we get into the nitty gritty, Josh, because we're going to, I want to make you laugh a little bit.
All right.
Okay, so I got a dad joke of the week, and this dad joke of the week was sent from my dad
There
for
you go.
the purpose of being used in the podcast.
There you
So
go.
I thought it was pretty funny. So it's actually a cartoon.
Okay.
It's a 4-piece cartoon. I'm going to read it side by side.
I'm going to describe it to you in detail as everything that's happening.
So there's 2 Lego guys.
Okay.
And they're at a Japanese restaurant.
Okay.
Okay. So one Lego guy says to the other, "Wait a minute. Is that Jesus?" And then the other guy says, "Yeah, he comes in every Thursday and orders a bowl of soup."
Okay. Soup.
And then the other guy says, "Why is Jesus frequenting a Japanese restaurant?" And then the other guy says, "Because he loves miso."
Oh, because he loves me so.
I like miso soup.
there you
So
go.
thanks, Dad, for sending that in.
There you go.
As
I
a
like it.
reminder, we would love you to send us dad jokes
Yes.
too, everyone. So
always get a
you
laugh.
can email us at hello@theinvesteddads.com or send them to us on social media, Twitter, whatever. If they make the cut, we might put them in the episode.
There you go.
So that's the dad joke of the week. Let's also talk about some things that aren't necessarily firmed up, but there are some discussions
Yes.
on this. So I mentioned a little bit earlier these loan repayment plans creating an income-driven, function of
Yes.
what payments are going to include there. As a reminder, those brought based on a percentage of discretionary income.
How do they
10%.
define discretionary
That was my
income?
question.
I couldn't see that anywhere.
Because everyone's discretionary income looks very different.
I don't have much discretionary income. Sorry.
Well, yeah. You're
That's,
married.
if I'm repaying loans, I don't have any discretion.
exactly.
That's all.
So
that's
yeah,
all required.
that piece goes from 10 to 5%. Most plans that are being discussed cancel remaining debt if they've made 20 years of payments.
Ooh, interesting.
And no borrower earning less than 225% of the federal poverty level, which is about $15 an hour based on a full-time salary.
225% is
Yes.
$15 an hour?
Yep.
Okay.
Will have to make payments at all.
Okay.
So that is interesting.
Yes.
Also, a proposal, again, these are all proposals, to forgive loan balances after 10 years. So not even 20, 10 for those with an original loan balance of less than $12,000.
They just pick a number?
Pick a number.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm thinking, if you can't pay off $12,000 in 10 years, woo, that's $1,200 a year, not counting interest.
Yeah.
But this is the part that, speaking of interest, that's interesting to me. Also proposing to cover unpaid monthly interest so that loan balances do not grow as long as borrowers are making monthly payments. So you're not accruing.
And that was my concern on this whole thing is if they went from 10% to 5% of discretionary income on your loan balance, the max you can pay, you already hear stories of people's debt growing while they're making the minimum payments. That's just only going to compound that even worse.
Correct.
Right? And so what I'm wondering
That's what that
was
would offset.
Yeah, they almost have to have something there that says, hey, if this is how much we tell you owe, that's almost like, if your credit card did that to you, because they give you the minimum balance,
yeah.
right? The government would be coming at them hard,
Right.
saying like you're deceiving them, you shouldn't be doing
Yep,
this, and
raking in money.
So I can see why that proposal
Yep.
really, if those go through, it almost has to be there, right?
Yep. So I've put together some key thoughts that are just very high level about this to keep in our minds as we're
Yes.
thinking about this discussion is, number one, this is a one-time event thus far.
Yep, that's what they've.
It is proposed to be
Described
a
as.
one-time thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not repeating, so that does not mean necessarily in 4 years the same next group of college students will have the same thing.
The seniors this year in high school are like,
Missed it out by a year or whatever. So that's just something to keep in mind. There's definitely no guarantee it happens again or that it happens this time, period. But at least it's being discussed as a one-time event.
Okay.
Number two, the debt really isn't being canceled or forgiven per se because it's being transferred. The government is taking responsibility for the individual's debt.
Yep.
So they're essentially going to still be due. It's just going to move to the government balance sheet from a personal balance sheet, right?
paying to the government.
They're going to pay themselves.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
interest.
Yeah.
Of course. Or they'll sell the loans. They'll probably sell the loans.
Oh, bundle them and sell
Yep,
them. Oh, look
exactly,
at that.
yeah.
Even better.
So the government still has to pay the debt, and they're going to use tax dollars for that or additional debt, which is the way we've been operating for quite a while. This is going to be challenged in court, something to think about. So there's no necessarily 100% assurance that it's going to go through as described.
And it's being challenged in court because it was not a congressional law passed.
Yep. It's unclear whether the president has the authority.
Okay.
Like they have oversight of the Department of Education, but do they have the authority to do this? Especially because there's going to be a transfer payment from the Treasury, which I think is where it gets sticky.
Okay.
Oftentimes you need congressional authority,
At least
to,
from the House.
yeah, to have transfer payments from the Treasury.
Okay.
So that is not necessarily a given at this point. Also, something to keep in your mind: the income limits. That 125 for individuals
Yes.
and 250 for married couples is a hard cliff.
Yep.
A lot of the social safety net things we've had, or stimulus payments, or child tax credits, or all these things over the last handful of years have had phase outs based on income. This is not that way. And it's based on 2020 or 2021 income. You're going to use one of those two numbers if you file for this. And it's like if you make 124,999 individually,
You're good.
you're good to go. Don't worry. If you make 125,001, it's zero.
Austin, you know that they round on the tax returns?
To the dollar.
Yeah, they round up or down.
Yeah, to the dollar, not to the penny.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you.
yeah.
They round those. So you're
use it
both
to-
at 25.
So you got to use it to... No.
yeah, 125. You round it up or
You
down?
round it to the dollar, not to the penny.
You round it up. You don't round up?
You round to the dollar. So
124,999
$124,999.
and 99 cents?
Who cares about the...
Okay,
yeah.
I thought you were giving me 99
No.
cents too. I wanted to know.
No pennies.
Okay, no pennies. Okay.
And
I
then,
gotcha.
yes, to the dollar.
Gotcha.
So
All
there,
right.
it's...
Then
that
don't
is-
worry about the pennies.
Yeah,
then.
it's a very interesting thing. It's a very hard...
Keep your change, the
As
IRS
it-
says.
That's right. As of now, it's a very hard stop.
Yes.
That could
Which is
also change.
unusual, especially since they're looking at past years where you have no control over adjusting your income, that there is a hard cliff there. That's kind of unusual.
It is. It is. So, and another thing to consider that's also quite unclear,
Yes.
just not really talked about, is whether this relief will be taxable or not. Now, you may be able to shed a little bit more light on this than I at this point, but essentially, this could be considered, depending on how you look at it, as income over who knows what time period, but you could owe taxes on that $10,000
yeah.
that you were forgiven. It's unclear. Again, no details on that. We don't know. So maybe keep an eye on that as more details come out. So this is the fun part that everyone's going to look forward to. So Josh and I, we love each other dearly.
We do.
We're going to probably have different opinions on this. Thus far, we've pretty much stated facts, okay? But we have a different opinion on this, maybe, or different opinions on certain aspects of it and how things look. So we're going to share our opinion. And it's okay to disagree because we are friends, and that is how things work, and that is how we should be as country people. So, my opinion, I can start first because I already wrote it out.
You do it.
The question is, who pays for it? Always. Well, the taxpayers, right?
Right.
Taxpayers are paying for this, but the part that I think is a little interesting is the fact that even taxpayers with no college degree are paying and subsidizing, essentially, those who went to college. So, I think that's a little sticky to me in my mind. I'm having a little bit of trouble with that. It also is hard to take away the fact that it could be viewed as some sort of slippery slope for debt forgiveness in general. So, like, no one made anyone go to college. They took on the debt willingly to go further their education to have a higher potential income in the future. You know, it's been encouraged, but it's also a choice. So that could lead to other forgiveness of debt in the future. I don't know, but that is a part that's a little sticky to me. It's also interesting to me that there's no designation for having completed a degree versus not having completed a degree. So one could simply have random courses or whatever, not completed a degree or whatever, but didn't finish it, and they would be given the same level of forgiveness as someone who finished the degree, got a job in their field, and is using it. So that's a little interesting, just a thought. And also, I believe the income limits are pretty high. So 125 and 250, 125 for individual, 250 for married, 1,000, seems quite high for the target to be helping people who need help financially. Because if you're making over $100,000 a year, you should be just fine paying your student loans, right? In my opinion. So I think this disproportionately might help the people who already are set up well. A lot of these people are college educated people with good jobs. So a little bit more help towards the people who already have a bit of an advantage, which I think would further not help, but further divide in income and wealth separations and stuff like that. That's something that's trying to be worked on. And I also think this is an interesting aspect to people who didn't go to college at all. These people are getting nothing. And therefore, like they already were, if you're looking at those wealth dispersion spectrums, at a disadvantage in a lot of ways. Well, this is only helping push the people who already have an advantage further ahead. So a little bit tough to think about that. And then, there is if you are in the solid financial situation and made the choices to pay off your student loans, foregoing other things, it's not necessarily equitable to be paying off someone else's, or relieving someone else's debt, forgiving someone else's debt, and then not doing anything to the people who were responsible and did pay off their debt as they were, as you should do with debt. And then my final note, and this isn't really trying to be too political, but if you look at this year in general, we have midterms coming up in...
Is that happening?
Apparently at the end of the year, November-ish. And, prelims are already kind of going on as of now, but
Ohio had their elections a little later this year because of some issues. So
yep. So if we think about what's coming up later in this year, and we think about the current political environment, very polarizing, any certain lever, I think, that could help one party or another is going to be exercised. And I see this as somewhat of a claim on an election promise, which still not to the amount it was promised, but a claim on an election promise to say we're working towards it to try and juice votes a bit, which either party would do if they had the ability to. I just think Democrats are using this as a bit of that. So those are my maybe controversial thoughts on this. I'm not saying nothing needed to be done. I went to college. College was very expensive. I graduated with student loans, so I get it. I also think this may have not, while they would probably say that there's a lot of thought that went into this, I don't think enough thought was put into this. So that's my opinion. Josh, hit me.
All right. So you and I, we're good friends.
We are.
Good friends. We don't always agree.
We don't.
We could be friends.
That's okay.
That's right. Couple thoughts on this. First, high level. Over the years, I've become more open to the concept of helping groups out, even though it may not be fair, equitable for all groups. So this being one of those situations where student loans are not everybody's. And when you offer something like this, again, 45 million people have student loans out of 330 million people here in the U.S. So you're choosing people, and
but it's not
providing a benefit.
Right.
But over the years, have become more open to that concept of it doesn't always have to be fair. I mean, I tell my kids that all the time, right?
Yeah.
There's one kid may get something when the other doesn't. It's situational. So I'm more open to that. And when it comes to student loan debt, I guess I'm less worried whether they get a degree or not, because there are all these fun life circumstances that happen that there may be a reason why they dropped out. And then they're worse off in that they don't have that degree, but they have the debt that they had started and never finished. So I think
a lot of those are like
to
really tough family situations.
Right. Maybe there's a health thing where you had to go back home, take care of family, those type of things. It's all. So I see this as a benefit. I'm on the same boat as you. As I was actually surprised when I saw the 125, 250 income level.
Right.
It seemed a little high because I think that's your adjusted gross income too.
Right.
At least from what I've read. And so that means on top of the deduction, which is anywhere between $12,000 and $24,000, it's up there. But I also have to remind myself, we live in a pretty low cost of living spot.
California.
My guess is 125, and I actually know this because I have friends that live on both coasts. 125 doesn't get you as much there as it does where we're at.
Yep.
So I get that it's hard to set a number and then have the whole United States get it. So, it surprised me from where I'm at. Yeah. But I guess I also get it that, like you said, the, $15 minimum wage is the same thing. Like you get more for your $15 here than you do in New York City. Overall, I'm less opposed to this as I was in the past. My concern is the timing, and it's even less. I agree with you that there's an election coming up, and it's not a coincidence of trying to push it quicker before that. The timing for me is more of we've been battling inflation, and there's been reports of different groups that run these analysis that have said minimal impact, hardly any impact, some impact, a lot of impact.
Yep.
I'm not smart enough from an economic standpoint to know really where that is, but my brain just tells me that's a lot of money that if you do forgive, and what you said too, was fully wipe out for about 20 million is what they had estimated. Yep. So if 20 million people have completely freed up their payments, that is additional spending. Yeah. And so, I would hope they're saving some of it, as a financial advisor.
Industry, yes, of course.
But, the concept there is that has to have at least a minimal impact on consumer spending, which has an impact on our GDP, and then or even like
inflation, confidence levels about your situation.
Oh yeah.
Like, you're like, oh, all of a sudden I have $10,000 or $20,000 less debt. Like I'm excited. I'm going to go buy something. I'm going to go celebrate.
Yep.
So there could be a psychological impact to that as well.
Yeah. So I'm at the stage in life where, I'm starting to think about college for my kids, and it's expensive. So I would actually rather see them spend more time on fixing the system than
this is
the
like a
debt.
Band-Aid.
But I get the struggle. We work with people who have debt and are paying, and those monthly payments, they add up, and it limits the other things they can do. So the cost, it's to the point where I'm not seeing any relief from government spending anytime soon. Yeah. So when you look at things they spend for, there's worse things they spend their money on than this.
You're
so
not wrong.
That's where I land. Is when I first heard this, I was kind of like, what's happening? And the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? That money could go to worse things or see less impact overall in people's lives than other ways. But I'm concerned about inflation, concerned about precedent. I'm concerned about habits that if, again, a senior in high school sees this and they don't grasp or don't believe the one-time thing, they'd be more apt to increase their debt load thinking, oh, I'll get something similar. I just worry about the habits that could be formed from that in general. So that's where I sit. There's kind of a lot of,
No, it's good.
It is what it is. There will be people that benefit, and I don't want to be in the boat where I'm mad because it didn't necessarily benefit me.
Right.
But I'm glad, but I just worry long term where that'll land us.
It is interesting. And you know what we did today? We had a discussion about our feelings, Josh.
We did.
And that's okay.
We didn't agree. But that's all right.
We didn't necessarily agree, but hey, we're going to keep working together and being happy.
That's right.
But I think that this is, hopefully you guys who are listening to this can think this through, and be able to have those conversations with your friends, with your family, with your kids, if they're in school, out of school, going to school, whatever, just to be able to talk. That's good.
How cool. What if the government said, we are just taking $10,000 of your student loan and putting it in a Roth IRA?
I
Oh,
could get
man.
behind.
There you go.
That I could get behind.
Forced retirement savings.
And it's going to grow tax-free forever. It's great. So anyway, it's definitely the hottest news this week.
It is.
So we thought we'd bring it to you pretty shortly. So Josh, how can people, help us to be contacted or to follow us in our lives?
Yeah, so we have social media. I've been told. So no, we have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Follow us on those. We try our best to be engaged with some content there. Also, if people were talking about this student loan, and after listening to it yourself, you're not super mad at either of us, you could share it with your friends or family. Yeah. And hopefully this will help carry on that conversation. Also, if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, you can always email us at hello@theinvesteddads.com.
That's right. Well, until next Thursday, have a great week.
All right, talk to you later.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Invested Dads podcast. This episode has ended, but your journey towards a better financial future doesn't have to. Head over to theinvesteddads.com to access all the links and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and we had a positive impact on your life, leave us a review, click subscribe, and don't miss the next episode. Josh Robb and Austin Wilson work for Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. All opinions expressed by Josh, Austin, or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast. There is no guarantee that the statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance may not be indicative of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses which would reduce returns. Securities investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment plan or strategy will be successful.